Welcome again. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jan Petrzelka, and I am an El Paso County Master Gardener. And my co-teacher today is my dear friend Art Corral. He too is a Master Gardener. We are both advanced trainers in propagation. I have more of a generalized propagation title, where he concentrated very specifically in budding and grafting. So that having been said, we're going to get started and talk today about Propagation 101. It starts with the seed. As the little sign says, we want you to keep planting seeds because you never know what may take root. Okay. Why do we propagate? Well, there's a number of reasons. Obviously, we want to multiply and increase our plants. We can maintain the genetics of a specific cultivar or a genotype plant. We create genetic variability, or if you want to call it plant breeding, you can do that. We perpetuate and keep a plant going. Maybe you have a favorite plant from a beloved family member, and it's been around for many, many years. And so you can propagate from that mother plant. And our favorite reason is because it's just fun. There's different methods of plant propagation, and they fall into two categories. One is sexual propagation, which is what we will do today, and that is seeds. And then there's 4 basic other types of asexual propagation, including cuttings, division, layering, budding, and grafting. Budding and grafting is what Art does the very, very best. And but each one of these would be a class for another day. So hopefully we'll be able to present some more information for you later. Seed propagation is the production of seed, and the production of seed rather is the result of the union of an egg and sperm. Our plants are no different than we are, folks. This union results in offspring that have the potential for variability, just like we do. You know, you might be an identical twin, but that's kind of a rare occurrence. But your mom and dad provided different genetic opportunities for you, and as a result, you may have blue eyes or brown eyes, or you might be a redhead, or you might not. So that variability is potentially available for plants as well. So what are the advantages of seed propagation and the disadvantages? Well, the advantages first is cheap and it's easy, okay? It's not a hard thing to do, and it's strictly a personal choice. You may just prefer to go out and buy your seedlings, and that's fine, that's great. You will save a lot of money by seed propagation. You can buy a $2.98 package of seeds and produce maybe 150 plants, where you might pay $4.50 for that one seedling. Most seeds will store well, and Art's going to talk to you about that in a little bit. As far as your commercial seeds are concerned, you really don't have to be concerned. There really are very high standards for your commercial seeds. And again, we're going to talk in a few minutes about commercial seeds versus those that you save. The disadvantages, they can lack uniformity. They can lack uniformity. It just depends. We do have that possibility for variability that I talked about, because these things some of them have been crossbred. It's a very specific, complicated scientific process. The other thing is there's a longer time to maturity. And let me give you an example. Say you had a really juicy peach that you ate yesterday, and you saved the pit. Well, that is the seed, and you can grow that peach tree. But a couple of things. For one thing, you're not going to have anything for about 8 years from which you would be able to harvest any fruit. It takes a long time. And then again, we talked about the possibility of variability and uniformity. You're not necessarily going to get that same juicy peach that you bit into yesterday. So those are some of the disadvantages as well as the advantages. Planning, just like in everything that we do, it really is key. First of all, you want to know what you want to plant and why are you planting it. Are you planting tomatoes, but you really don't like them? The same, maybe you're planting geraniums, you're not crazy about those. So you want to know what and why. Decide where you want to propagate your seeds. Most of the things that we plant require a lot of sunlight. And of course, here in El Paso, that's not a big deal. Now we have somebody here that's from England, and that could be a very different situation. It's important, I truly believe, to know what does best locally. And we have some opportunities to help you with that kind of information. At the beginning of the class, Helen posted some links that I believe will be very, very helpful to you. The first one is the link to our El Paso County Master Gardener website. It's an award winner, and on that website, you will find tons of information about everything having to do with gardening, including information about propagating. This is a really popular time right now to be planting vegetables. And there's a planting calendar that's out there so that you will know when to plant here in El Paso. And if you are from somewhere else, you can Google and find that information. You might find a local Master Gardener Association that can help you with that information. So you want to know when to plant, and you want to know what to plant. We also have provided on that chat a link of home vegetable varieties for El Paso County. And then there's another really good one that's hosted by the National Gardening Association that says when to plant vegetables in El Paso, Texas. But this class is not just about vegetables. It's about all kinds of seeds. So you want to know how you're going to acquire your seeds. Are they some you saved, or have you purchased them? You got to get your act together, get your supplies together before you get started. Prepare your trees and, prepare the trays that you're going to propagate in and sow your seeds. Then you're going to want to move them to an appropriate germination station. We have to learn how to take care of them. You can't just stick them in the soil and say, see ya. You've got to know how to care for things. We'll talk a little bit about potting up seedlings and hardening off seedlings, and then transplanting them to the gardener. So that gives you a kind of an idea of what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to turn the screen over to Art and let him talk to you about acquiring seeds. Take it away, Art.
Okay, good morning. Thank you all. So my name is Art Corral, and like Jan said, I am also an El Paso County Master Gardener Association member. And just to let you know, there's hundreds of presentations on planting seeds and all that, but we're trying to make it as to the home gardener friendly as possible. Those of us that like to grow our own or start our own seedlings, for whether it's vegetables or whether it's fruit trees or it's ornamental plants. This presentation is geared towards the home propagation person, not the industrial type. So we want to make it as easy as possible for you all to be able to do that. So we're now to the slide where it says acquiring seeds. Basically, there's two ways that you can acquire seeds. You can purchase the seeds. As you do, make sure that when you purchase these seeds that you check the date on the seed packets, and then the germination rate decreases after the first year. So if you see a seed packet and you check on there and it tells you that it was processed basically like in 2015 or 2016 or so, then you kind of might not want to buy that packet. And then most seeds have 65 to 85 germination rate. So this decreases as the seeds get older. And then there is another way of acquiring your seeds is by collecting the seeds yourself. You need to make sure, though, that you understand a little bit about the biology of plants. Plants grow, they bloom, and then from the blooms, they either produce a fruit or they produce a seed. But you've got to make sure that those seeds are fully ripe before you harvest them. And I'll show you a few examples in a minute. And then when you do collect your own seeds, you need to make sure that you label them. Put on we keep a lot of them in our old pill boxes, and we put a label on there as to, you know, what kind of seed is it from, what kind of plant. And then also make sure that you put the date on there when you harvested those seeds, okay? Now, seed packets will provide valuable information. Again, the date of when they were, they should be planted by, or when they were processed, the planting date, the planting depth. A lot of your seeds have different requirements as to how deep do you put them in that little pot for them to germinate properly. So the most common depths are 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. So make sure you pay attention to that on your seed packet. All right, and then it tells you days till germination, so that you can keep an eye on that. And of course, it's gonna be a little bit different from person to person, because it all has to do with what is the environment in the location that you're trying to get these seeds to germinate. One person's home might be warmer than another person. It all depends. But as long as you try to keep the variables, the temperature, the soil moist, and the light that you give them, it'll come more or less 2 or 3 days difference from one home to the other. It all depends. It also depends on the location at your house as to where you're trying to germinate these seeds. And then spacing, of course, you try to have at least only maybe one seed per little pot that you put it in, or the whatever container you're starting your seed packet, your seeds in. And then the information on the packet will also give you the number of days between the day that you planted that seed and when you should expect to harvest, okay?
And if I may interject here, Art, one of the things I was thinking about this morning, I'm going to show, because it's really hard, we're going to show some seed packets in a minute. This is a seed packet that has lots and lots of information, and every seed packet is going to be a little bit different. I have found that those that you buy in the big stores have a lot more information than some that you may get from a catalog. But as he said, be sure that you know your seeds are relatively fresh. We're not going to say that they won't germinate, and we'll show you in a minute how you can test that. But this information is very pertinent. So here's some pictures. Go ahead, Art. I apologize for interrupting.
No problem. That's why Jan and I we love to do these presentations, because we work as a tag team and we just jump in back and forth and all that, and we have fun with it. That's what it's all about on these presentations. And the gardening and all that, it's all a fun thing, like she said on the very first slide. Okay, so back to seed packets. You can see on the left side of your screen, all different kinds of seed packets, different products that you will expect to get from those. And then on the right-hand side, it's got the back of those seed packets. And like Jan said, look at all the information that's on those seed packets. Pay attention to that, because it also tells you, if you see 3 of those packets have a map of the United States, and that basically gives you information as to when is the proper time of the year to try to germinate those seeds. Because, you know, and not all seeds have the same requirements. You have some seeds that require cooler weather because they are like winter type vegetables, your cabbages, your cilantro, things like that, they require a cooler weather for them to germinate properly. All right, next slide, please. So, seed collection. Here's a good example that I put together for you all. Remember I said your seeds have to be mature, up to full ripeness. Each plant has its own biological clock, and it says, okay, I'm starting to grow now. It's time for me to produce flowers so that I can produce seeds to perpetuate my my own species. So look at the left side. A green bean, they're delicious to eat while they're green beans, nice and tender. But if you leave those long enough on the vine, that pod will turn brown. And by that time, it tells you that the beans inside are fully ripe for either for you to cook them or for you to plant them. And so those are pinto beans right there. And the middle picture again, it shows, I went ahead and opened it up for you so you can see the difference between those green seeds are delicious to eat, but the ones on the right, the brown ones, are the ones that are ripe and ready for propagation. The same thing with the jalapeno pepper on the right side. The green pepper is great and delicious to make salsa and all that. But if you want to propagate the chilies, leave them on the vine till they turn red and they are at full ripeness. Then you can harvest the seeds for you to be able to try to propagate those. Here's another example from our fern outside. And that's all on the same limb right there. And I was gonna separate those, but then I said, no, it looks better this way because it demonstrates that the bright red berries, the seeds inside those berries are ready for propagation. And then the ones right next to them, you can see they're starting to change color. They're almost there, but not quite. And then on the bottom left of that picture, you see the 3 green ones. Well, those are not even ready yet. So you might be able to pick the red ones and save them. And so those would be ready. The same thing with a picture of the geranium seeds on the right-hand side of this slide. You can see the pods that I picked off the geranium. They're still green. If you leave them on there long enough, those are gonna turn brown and it's gonna kind of start to loosen up those seeds. And then the brown seeds on the right-hand side, you can see they're ready. They're ready to propagate themselves. And look, the plant, if you notice each seed, the dark little nodule that you see on there, that's the seed. And then you see some fluffy stuff on it. That's the plant's way of letting the wind catch those little fluffy things like a feather to carry the seed away and plant it somewhere else. So you can see the difference between not ready and ready seeds. All right, now this slide shows you some of the seeds that I collected in the summer of our Tycoon tomato that we were doing an experiment in my backyard. I said, well, maybe we can try to, instead of having to buy Tycoon tomato seeds every year, maybe I can grow 4 or 5 tomato plants in my backyard and we can harvest our own tomato seeds. So I harvested these in the summer of 2020. And you can see the pillbox, I labeled it and I put when I harvested them. So we went ahead and planted 3 of those in our greenhouse at our demonstration and teaching garden in pots. And here are the results. I'm babysitting these. I put them in the garage whenever there's going to be a freeze. But you notice that on January 6th, I took this picture in the garage and they're already producing tomatoes while sitting in my garage. Now, right now, I have them outside because the weather is so nice. So this is the result and the way that you can harvest your own seeds.
Well, not only did he plant this and took this picture this last month, but stop and realize that January is not a great time for tomatoes unless you're art. And then he's got them going so he can have fresh tomatoes year round. And a point too of information that we talked about earlier. These are the Tycoon tomatoes. We were having a really tough time finding these seeds, and they're a very popular tomato. They may not be exactly like the seed that the fruit that this came from, but they still have the possibility for that genetic diversity. But nevertheless, it'll be really close. So we're looking forward to having plenty of Tycoon seeds. Thank you, Art.
All right, so once you harvest your seeds, the next slide will start showing you seed storage. And basically, just get any kind of container that will hold those seeds. Make sure though that before you put them in a container and put a lid on them, that they are completely dry, because you don't want any humidity in that container, because then they'll start to get moldy and it'll destroy your seeds. So you notice that we've got some Tic Tac containers there. We've got pill boxes. We've got little plastic containers or little envelopes. If you want an extra measure, if you put those seeds in one of those plastic containers, save, those little silica packets that come sometimes in your medication or whatever. Save those and just throw one in there along with the seeds, just to double make sure that, to try to provide that dryness atmosphere. Okay. The next slide, please. Okay, to seed germination test, you want to try to test your seeds, especially if you've got some that were left over from, remember we said the longer the seeds hang around, their germination starts to decline. So if you want to test your seeds and see if they're still viable, you can place the seeds in a moist paper towel and then fold the paper towel in half and place it inside of a plastic bag. And then you put it in a sunny location or where it'll get at least some light, and leave anywhere from 7 to 10 days, and then check and see if the seeds germinated. We don't want you to go ahead and try to plant, 50 seeds of a particular plant and without doing this germination, because that's a lot of work. So if you do the germination test first, those seeds are still good, go ahead and plant your 50 plants. Okay.
This particular one was a squash seed. Very interesting. It was put on the paper towel on August the 8th. It started to, you can see the roots have broken the seed coat. And on the 12th, that's 4 days. And then on the 17th, you've got little squash plants going on here. So, and also this is a good way to save money if you're not sure about how viable your seeds are, because then you don't waste a lot of soil and so forth and so on seeds that will not germinate. So, and it's easy and fun to do. You can put them on top of your refrigerator, give them some heat to get them going. Okay, next slide. You ready, Art?
Right. Now, there are some seeds that need a little bit of help to germinate. A lot of your seeds have a very, very hard coating that's on those seeds. For example, your birds of paradise, your blue bonnet, your other seeds that have a very hard coating on the outside, you need to help them along so that you can get the moisture inside there so that the embryo can start developing. The first one is scarification. That is a process of altering the seed coat to make it more permeable to air and water. And so basically what I do with a bird of paradise, and I can't see it on the screen because my picture is not on the screen, but what I do is I either use a file. Can you see that, Jan?
Yes.
You can use a file, and basically you take your seed and you basically try to file that down to where you break that outer coating. Or you can use sandpaper, or what I like to do is I like to take my little pruning shears and I just clip off like that, and hopefully you will see a white spot on that seed where I have broken the outer shell. Now that's going to allow, and I'll show you in a minute on a slides, the difference between if you plant them without scarifying and if you plant them by scarifying, you're going to help that seed quite a bit. All right. Then the other way to help those seeds along is stratification. Some plants, for example, your rose bushes, you can collect those seeds from the rose hips. However, they need to have a certain amount of chilling time to be able for those to break the dormancy. So we'll show you a picture in a minute of 2 different ways to do the stratification. Okay, on the next slide, okay, scarification, like I said, there's different ways to do it. You can soak them in hot water. Now, make sure that the water is not boiling hot, because then you're going to cook that seed and forget it. It'll never sprout. Just warm water. You can use sandpaper like I showed you. Some people want to use chemicals like sulfuric acid. Clippers and pruners works the best for me as far as those Mexican bird of paradise. And then you can also soak them in vinegar for maybe a couple of hours, not overnight, because again, you don't want to destroy the embryo inside.
And I think this is a point to, I think we all love bluebonnets. Of course, it's the state flower of Texas, and you're going, that's one of the seeds that needs to be scarified. And I just purchased some, and fortunately they're already scarified for me. But think about it. Mother Nature scarifies those seeds. Birds are real good at planting those seeds. Well, the acids in their guts will help to break those seed coats down. And then when they plant the seeds, if you will, you know, they're all over, especially East Texas, are gorgeous in April and May. And so Mother Nature has a way of scarifying things as well. So that's how that happens when, I guess we call it Mother Nature's greenhouse. Okay.
So here's the example of the scarification, how it helps those seeds. These are seeds that I have done for my past presentations. On the upper left-hand corner, you can see that the seeds were not scarified on the left side. These were soaked for 24 hours. I did these in February of 2019. Now, the ones on the right-hand side of that same picture up on the upper left-hand corner, those were scarified. I did break the outer hard coat and I soaked for 24 hours, just like the other ones. And then on the same date. Now, if you notice that those seeds are about 2 or 3 times larger than the ones on the left, that means they have absorbed that moisture and the embryo in there is starting to develop. Now, if you notice on the upper right-hand corner of this slide, those are the same seeds that are on the left side that were not scarified. And that picture there is on October of 2019. And when I put them in that plastic bag with a wet paper towel, remember it was back in February and they still look the same. Nothing's happened. Okay, so now let's go to the bottom left of that slide. Again, there's those seeds that were not scarified on the left, but the ones on the right, now this is the presentation that I did on September of 2019. I kept those seeds in the wet paper towel in the plastic bag, and you can see that they're already even starting to develop and protrude that little root that comes out through that hole that I made with my clippers. All right, and then I left them a few days longer, kept them in the paper bag and in the plastic bag. And now on the right-hand side, those are the same seeds, and you can see they've even started producing their first set of leaves. And then I took those and I put them in little pots and grew my own birds of paradise and to give away to all my friends and family. Okay, next slide, please. All right, now stratification, remember this is the chilling of certain seeds. So you can either do it 2 ways. Jan has on the left side of your screen, she put the seeds in a medium and then she put them in a tray and covered it with foil and placed it in her refrigerator. Pre-soak the potting medium in the container. Make sure that, remember that whenever you're trying to germinate something, that your soil, your medium that you're trying to germinate in is always adequately moist, not overly moist where it just gushes out, but it's got, and you don't want it completely dry either. So a nice moist medium. And then check weekly and remove from the refrigerator and transplant when the seedlings start to emerge. Now on the right-hand side of that slide are the rose hips that I went out in my backyard, and I have had these in the refrigerator since January 9. And it told me that they were supposed to get at least 5 to 6 weeks of chilling. So these have been in my refrigerator ever since then. They've got about what, maybe a couple of more weeks before they're ready. Okay.
Okay.
So that's stratification.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to what I imagine y'all are going, okay, Jen, Art, get busy. We want to see how this happens and how we do things. So we're going to talk a little bit about materials and supplies. It's very important that you use clean containers. It really doesn't matter what the containers are, as long as it has a drainage hole in it, okay? They've got to have a drainage hole. You can use cell packs, that's what we call these, or we call them our little 6-packs. These are the Jiffy pots that are biodegradable, and lots of times people will just take the whole thing and stick it in the ground. Not my favorite thing to do here in El Paso, but they will break down, or you can take them out of the Jiffy pots when you're ready. These are different recycled pots from the garden centers. We keep a good supply of 4-inch pots on sale in our greenhouse because we do a lot of that. These are little 2-ounce bathroom cups, so you can see anything will work. And then here's our plant whisperer demonstrating that you'll also find these kinds of things in the big box stores and the nurseries as well. And it's a complete seed starter kit. To disinfect your containers if you are recycling them, we recommend a 1 part bleach to 9 parts water solution, and that will help you for disinfecting your containers. Your germination medium is very, very important. And there's lots of people who, will direct sow seeds as well. That's very common. And on that last document that's on the chat about when to plant vegetables in El Paso, it's great because it shows you whether you're going to want to germinate those seeds in a container ahead of time, or whether you're going to do what we call direct sowing. But if you're germinating in a container, you want to use fine, uniform, loose, aerated, and well-draining soil. And you can get that by purchasing bags of seed starting potting mix. It's a whole lot lighter, y'all, than potting mix. And this is what we recommend, what we've had a great deal of success with. It's also free of insects and diseases, different pathogens that come along. And of course, weeds. We don't want to share the nutrients and so forth that come in that soil with weeds. It has low fertility and it's able to hold moisture. And you can see there's a variety of brands that are out there. Tools of the trade. This is one of those containers that I purchased this at one of the big box stores. It was full of the Jiffy pots. It holds, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 6, 8. So there's 50 seeds that you could germinate. That's a lot. That's a lot of plants, whether it's geraniums or eggplant. That's a lot to share. This is one of the garden hacks that we like to use. This is one of those chicken containers. Ate the chicken, obviously, and cleaned this all out. And then you can plant, and I'll show you in a minute. We planted a 6-pack with basil, and then used this cover on the tray, which of course this seedling thing has as well, to help with moisture retention. This cost me about $8. This cost me about 10 cents. So, it's up to you. Another thing that we recommend, if you are really serious about that, is to purchase heat mats. Okay, they maintain uniform temperatures for seed starting, and it really does help to keep that soil warmer. And one of the things that we talk about in gardening and in the vegetable planting calendar, and I'll take tomatoes versus chilies, for instance. Chilies need to be in a much warmer soil. So we don't plant those chilies out here into the ground until April or May, at probably the earliest. Our tomatoes will go in the ground hopefully by the 3rd to 4th week in March, because we can protect them from potential late frost and they will do fine. These are available online. They come in different sizes. You can purchase a thermostat to go with so that you can always control that temperature, but those are strictly optional. More tools that we talk about. Let me go over these real quick. We talk about a paper plate, and I'll tell you why that's important. Tweezers, a pencil or a dibble, seeds, of course, a fork and a label and a marker. A lot of these obviously are things that you have at home. And we use the paper plates to put the seeds out on so that we can take our tweezers. You can see here we've got, and seeds come in all different sizes, and some of them are absolutely itty bitty, tiny, minuscule things. So they're hard to plant. But if you put them on a paper plate, make sure that it is a paper plate, not one of the styrofoam ones, because the styrofoam holds a lot of electricity and it really is difficult to pick the seeds up. A pencil, or what we call a dibble. These are dibbles down here that are made by one of our master gardeners, and they're very useful in all different areas of the garden. But the eraser on a number 2 pencil is 1/4 inch on a new pencil, one that hasn't been used. And that is a very common depth for planting seeds. And so you can use that when you fill a container with soil and you're going to plant that seed. You can use the end of that pencil to do it, or you can use a dibble. And this smaller one works very well for that. We just actually turn it around and use the back side. And then this dibble right here is ideal when you're doing a 6-pack, like I showed you a few minutes ago. This is really cool. It was an ingenious invention to me. These are little tiny dowels, and these are 1/2 inch long. That's another very common seed depth. And on the other side, it's 1/4 inch long, and it fits perfectly on top of one of those 6-packs. These are great for transplanting different kinds of plants. If you're going to pot your little seedlings up, this makes a really nice size hole for that. Again, forks are wonderful. Designer fork here. The cost is absolutely nominal. And so you can use that for lifting a seedling out of a 2-inch pot and putting it into a larger one. And of course, we've talked about labeling. It's vitally important that you do that. So those are some tools that are optional. Now, when you plant your seeds for transplants, as Art mentioned, it's very important. And I preach about this in different areas of garden, especially in container gardening. Always dampen your planting medium, folks. Always dampen that medium to create a moist environment. And when you do it for propagating seeds, you want to, start slowly, add your water, and then you want to grab a handful of that soil until it's the consistency of a wrung out sponge. And that will be the consistency of the damp soil that you will put in your pot. You will then fill your container, whatever you're using, with the medium, the dampened medium, and then eliminate air pockets. You can just take your fingers and poke in there to make sure that the air pockets don't pack the soil so tight that the seeds are going to struggle to germinate. So, but do eliminate those air pockets. You're going to plant the seed at the depth indicated on the seed packet using your dibbles or that expensive number 2 pencil. And then you're going to cover, once you've planted the seed, you want to cover it with a little bit of the medium, or what you can purchase in, usually it's more available in the nurseries. It's called vermiculite, and it's a very light medium, and you just sprinkle it gently over the seeds, and you'll see a picture in just a minute. Then you're going to place your pot or your 6-pack on a heat mat, and if you're using it, and adjust that to 72 to 75 degrees is a good benchmark there. You want to keep the medium consistently moist. As I mentioned before, you cannot just walk away and leave it. You need to provide adequate light, either in a window or a grow light, as I mentioned, or as Art mentioned. This is for the home gardener. We don't all have heated and cooled greenhouses where we can go out and set up a commercial type situation. So this is for you, that you can do this at home. You want to create a greenhouse effect when possible. I talked about the plastic lid with the chicken container and the plastic lid that came with the tray of pots. Your temperature affects your germination rate, so it's important to maintain as constant a temperature as you can. Now, I have propagated things in my garage before, but I'm very careful to make sure when I do that, because your garages more than likely are not heated and cooled, and it can either get really cold or it can get really hot. So you want to be careful about where you're setting up your seed propagation. Windowsills, a south-facing windowsill is really ideal. For water and light, let's talk about that a minute. Plant in a damp medium, have we mentioned that? Mist your seedlings using a spray bottle. Don't use a watering can. You're going to flush that seed right out of its home. So to start, make sure you mist them lightly with a spray bottle. Allow the soil to drain to the bottom. Remember, I told you must have drainage holes in those containers, because actually more plants, and this is in gardening in general, more plants die from overwatering, folks, than they do from underwatering. And when you overwater, the soil tends to get soggy, and then you're going to start breeding pathogens. You're going to see mold that's growing on the top. You're going to get little bugs that are flying around. So you want to check frequently for the proper moisture, and you can get a handle on that even by lifting a container. And you can tell a dry container is much lighter, of course, than one that is plenty moist. So don't let the soil dry out between waterings either. You're going to have to keep a close eye on that until those seeds germinate. As far as light is concerned, we recommend the south-facing sunny window that can provide adequate light. Now, I have found this to be a little bit difficult for those of us that have recently replaced the windows in our homes, because they have all of this UV protection and so forth and so on. But I still have had luck with that south-facing window. 12 hours of light is daily is preferred. There's been some research with the grow lights that are available that people will leave them on overnight for 24 hours. I had one of my master gardener mentors, I was talking with her one day. I said, I'm using a grow light, but my plants are getting real lakey. And she said, well, are you turning it off? You know, like when the sun goes down? And I said, well, no, I leave it on all the time. And she said, Jan, the sun doesn't shine at night, so give them a break. So that's, and as I said, the jury's kind of out on that. But think about that. If your plants were out in nature, the sun's not going to be going 24 hours a day. So the grow lights or the fluorescent lights are really beneficial, but you want to keep them about 2 inches above those plants so that they don't stretch towards that light. When you have them on a windowsill, we recommend turning your plant tray about 1/4 of a turn daily, because again, those plants are going to reach towards that sunlight. And of course, it's very important, just like us, they need air. Good air circulation is very important. So here's the steps to germination. And I think this is really, really interesting. It shows what happens, for instance, assuming this was one of those bird of paradise seeds that Art talked about. He plants it and we don't see anything initially. You just see dirt, right? Or soil, your planting medium, because the riot is going on underneath you all. It's not going on at the top. The seed is, this is the progression of how the seed coat breaks, and then the root starts to come out, and it gets longer and longer and longer and longer because it has taken that water up. It's called imbibation. It's a big word like mayonnaise, and you know, maybe not one that you can remember, but it's one of my favorite ones for some reason. So there's that chemical reaction that's going on in the seed to create that embryo. And then when it germinates is when the root breaks the seed coat. And then in this picture, you'll see again, here they are, they've started, they've gotten the roots, they're still under the ground, we can't see anything, but all of a sudden something starts to peek its head through that planting medium. And you know, if you're a gardener, that's exciting. It makes you really happy. You can see this progression. It gets its first set of leaves, and initially the second set, and will continue to grow. So I mentioned that we had done a 6-pack. This is a 6-pack of basil that I planted in late December, and it has emerged. And this is the seedlings emerging and what we call the first set of leaves. And then in time, it keeps going, and here you've got the second set of leaves, okay? Basil, as a rule, will germinate in 7 to 12 days. Usually it does quite well. It is not a winter plant, so I've got it tucked away in our greenhouse at the Scarification demonstration and teaching garden. And then as it goes, as time goes on, here it is ready to plant out in a container or the garden. Here's another picture of that same basil container. It's the picture that I took on, let's see, this is backwards, I'm dyslexic. It was taken on January the 18th. Of course, we can't see anything. And then it started to emerge, that same picture in that designer chicken container. And I had the lid on it, so it provided really good moisture and kept that cozy and warm as well. These are pinto beans that aren't planted in the little 2-ounce bathroom cups. He poked holes in them. You can see the seeds are sitting here in the soil. And then those were done on, I think you did them on January the 10th, Art. And this is a picture of them about, oh, I think I took this picture right after we came back from the holidays. So, and now they're huge and ready to go. Labeling is very important because so many seeds look alike. And when you propagate, and I'm a very chatty person, as everybody knows, that's in the association. So I have to really concentrate because I may not see a seed, and the seeds many times are black, and you drop it in a hole and then you can't even see it. So you have to concentrate hard on that. And when you're done, make sure that you label everything. You can buy your commercial labels if you want and spend lots and lots of money. And we do have some in our greenhouse operation. This is an example of them. We do recycle them. You can clean them with acetone and a rag or a cotton ball. This is a plastic knife, and you can label it that way. Even a clothespin that you can clip on the side of a pot, or a plain old popsicle stick. But as you will see, these are, of course, recycled and repurposed items in many cases, and the commercial ones. But make sure that you put the name, you want to label your plant with its name and the date that it was propagated. And then I've found this on the internet. I thought this was a fun picture because then when you plant them out in the garden, you can use rocks that you paint so that you'll know these are tomatoes and this is squash, carrots, so forth and so on. This is a picture that we took. We planted close to 300 tomatoes in our greenhouse on Monday. And this is an example, you all, of the vermiculite that I spoke about that is covering the hole where the seed is. And it really helps the plant to push through that lightweight vermiculite when it's ready to germinate. And each and every one of these pots are labeled because we have numerous cultivars of tomatoes that we are planting to get ready to go out into our gardens. Now, once those plants have developed their, what we call their second set of leaves, then you're going to many times pot them up to a bigger container, okay? These are plants that are done in a 6-pack with a little 2-inch containers. And I want to go back real quickly to these pots. We're doing things a little different this year to help us save some time and energy. These are planted in 4-inch pots, and when they're ready and they're hardened off, they will go directly into the garden. But many times you're going to want to plant those up. You can use that designer fork that I showed you earlier, or a popsicle stick to gently, very gently lift those out of the little 2-inch container, put it into a larger container with dampened soil. Always, always, always dampen your soil and handle those very carefully. And then this is an example of the final product. The finished product, we had a great herb class a few years ago. Each and every one of these plants that you see here was planted from seed. And you can see many of them have gotten quite large. These are different kinds of basil, lemon balm, oregano, chives, all sorts of things. So we were really proud and had a really successful class for that. So this gives you an idea of what you can look forward to. Now then, I'm going to ask Art to talk about a little bit about the importance of hardening your plants off before you get them into the garden.
Okay, well, a very important step that you need to remember is we hate for you to go through all this trouble and try to germinate and get these plants to start growing and all that. And then all of a sudden here comes middle of March and you figure, okay, it's time to take them outside. So you just take them outside and you plant them either in your garden or in your containers. Remember, plants are just like humans. If you're not used to the sunlight hitting your skin, then the plants aren't either, because they're going to get sunburned just the way that you would. So you have to take them out slowly, introduce them to the new environment, and that's what we call hardening. In other words, so you take your little plants outside and you introduce them into the new environment by putting them in a semi-shaded place, and then they might get an hour of a little bit of sunlight. In the morning is preferably when the sun should hit them. And then each day try to increase the amount of time that they are in the actual sunlight so that their leaves get accustomed to it. Just like we start forming a tan on our skin to protect us, so do the leaves on these plants. So hardening is very important. One of the big mistakes people usually make when they buy their plantlets from the big box stores is they'll take them right home after they've been sitting inside the building at one of those places and put them out there in their garden in the full sun, and all of a sudden they collapse and they die. Okay, so make sure that you harden them. Now, on the left side of this picture here is the jalapeno plant that I have out on the garage, and about 6 inches is about the right height of when you would actually plant them outside in your garden or your containers. And then the geranium, the jalapeno I started from a seed. The geranium I started from a cutting. And now before I plant those outside, I will begin to take them out a little bit at a time and let them get hardened, okay? Now, a lot of the things that we, next slide, please. So everything that you do from the get-go, you should keep a journal. Here's my journal right here. Everything that I do when I plant something, and then when it germinates, or once the plants are already in progress, like my indoor plants or my outdoor plants, whatever I do, I always put, what did I do? This is the date that I planted them. This is the date that they germinated. This is the date that I transplanted them to bigger pots. This is the day that I started hardening them. And then when I fertilize and everything, keep a journal. It's very important because you might want to do it next year and continue doing it year after year after year. And you don't have to sit there and figure, oh my gosh, I don't remember. When should I or shouldn't I do certain things, okay? You have to remember this presentation that Jen and I put together is to the everyday home gardening type, where you're going to want to grow your own things, whether they're vegetables, ornamental flowers, trees, whatever. So I know that we covered some of these items like your heating mats, your growing lights and all that. Don't think that you have to go out and spend a lot of money to germinate your seeds and all that. You can accommodate, you can use all kinds of little things that you probably throw away in the recycle and the trash every day. For example, when Jen talked about greenhouse and keeping those things moist and containers on planting, to those of you that buy those real expensive eggs or even the regular egg cartons, look at this perfect planting container. If you open this, these are the ones from the real expensive eggs. I won't mention the brand, but look at this. They come in plastic. If you do that and you plant your seeds in here, make sure you make a little hole in each compartment, and then you just leave that lid on, you've got an automatic greenhouse. And then if you cut this part off the tray, you can put it under here to catch the water if you put it on your windowsill or somewhere inside your house. This is a perfect germinating, what do you call it, container. All right. So anyway, so we want to thank you all for joining us and hope that you got a lot of good information. Like Jen and I said before, we like to do these presentations and we like to have fun. That's the most important thing. All right. Thank you all and hope to see you all in the future.
Exactly. And on this last slide that we're showing you is the number for our Master Gardener Help Desk. We're not out there right now, but you're more than welcome to call and leave a message and we will get back in touch with you. We hope our help desk will be up soon. And in the chat, I know that Helen posted the website and those a number of useful links that hopefully will help you with this. So that's the end of our formal presentation. Let me go here and see if I can figure out. I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay.
Yeah, I believe we have some questions maybe that we need to address here. We might go over a few minutes, but can we have some of those questions that might be on the chat box?
Sure. Ruby asks, for the jalapeno peppers, if you get a store-bought type, would the seeds propagate or would you need to wait? You can't propagate them unless they're ripened.
That's a good question. The pictures that you saw on my slide, I actually bought those at the grocery store. Now, what I do is I look for jalapenos that have the slightest little, even a red spot, even if it's just a slight red spot, they have already started maturing. I brought them home, put them in the basket with my bananas and apples and all that. They continue to ripen. It turned completely red. And that's the one that you see on the right-hand side after I let it do that. So as long as they have a little bit of red on them, the seeds are starting to mature.
Okay, and then the next question we had from Kathy is, did we wait on the tomato to reach shriveled and brown, or when did we get the seeds? When were they ready?
Yeah, on tomatoes, I mean, you could leave them on there, but as soon as they are ripe enough to eat, those seeds that I showed you, I harvested them as like slice a tomato for us to eat in our salad in the kitchen. So when they reach full ripeness to edible level, then as you cut your tomato slice, just squeeze those seeds out and then dry them out and set them out so that they'll dry completely.
Well, and I think that it's interesting to notice, especially with many of your vegetables, and that's the reason I wanted to publish those useful links, because one of the things that we always do, for instance, when we talk about propagating our tomatoes, and of course that's a favorite of everybody's, and we back out of that frost date, the last frost date that's suspected in the area in which you live. And I see that we've got people, we've got somebody from England, somebody from Canada, from down in Houston. So those dates are all different. And you want to back out of those frost dates. Read again, your package, your seed packet to find out, or Google the information, you know, when's the best time to propagate these things. Usually it'll tell you a number of weeks so that you will know that you're going to give that seed the opportunity to get started and finish growing and be ready to go out in the sun. So, and you know, I noticed on the chat, there's some information about the sunshine. Of course, in the winter, it's a little harder, and that's where these grow lights are. I think lots of us have the fluorescent lights that are available. And I found those to be very, very, very effective. But like Art was talking about the tomato seeds, he sliced the tomatoes, enjoyed them, saved the seeds, let them dry out, as you can see based on those pictures. And how long did that take, Art, for those seeds to dry? Do you recall?
Oh, about 3 or 4 days. It all, like I said, a lot of these things you have to kind of jiggle things around because every single home is going to be a little bit different. Some people like to keep their home warmer than others and all that. So you just kind of have to play it by ear and just do what you need to do and figure out your own particular, you know, as far as the light and things coming in through your window. Are you going to put them on your counter, things like that?
Okay. And
other questions?
yes. There's one from Heather. And she says, are you collecting from heirloom plants or regular commercial seed that might possibly be a hybrid? Like a beefsteak tomato is mainly hybrids in stores.
You
And
know,
that,
I also last year I planted now these Tycoons were seeds that we had purchased for the gardens, and then I planted some of those plants in my backyard to harvest the seeds. But I have also had real good luck with Roma tomatoes and some of the cherry tomatoes that we buy at the store, and they're real good and all that. So I will even save those seeds and plant those. Last year, I had a real good crop of Roma tomatoes that the seeds came from the one I bought at the grocery store.
and that goes back to that vegetable gardening guide and the not only the planting calendar, but the varieties for El Paso. And as far as the heirloom plants are concerned, Heather, they typically do not have as large of a yield on your tomato plants than maybe the Roma or even the Tycoon. That for us, the Tycoon was identified as a superstar in Texas. And then all of a sudden, last year we couldn't hardly find them. So that's when Art started with the seed collection. But it really depends on what you like. As I mentioned, when you want to decide what you want to plant and what you want to eat. But some things will do better here in El Paso than they would do in Houston or different areas of the country. So you'll need to, but I would really research that and find out, what's going to work best in the area in which you live. Any other questions here?
Yes, Crystal wants to know, can the seed sprouts used in a germination test be planted after they have germinated?
Yes, if you remember that slide of the birds of paradise that I showed you, the seeds that had kind of ballooned up a little bit and swollen, and then they started to produce a little root. And then the following picture on that same slide, I left them in that plastic bag a few days longer, and they actually started sprouting the little leaves. And so I put them either at that stage or when they already started putting the little root, I transplanted them onto soil, and that's where I got about 8 of those birds of paradise that I potted up and gave away.
The same was true with the squash demonstration that on the seed germination test. After the 5 days or 7 days, I took them out and I planted them in a container, hardened them off a little bit, and I had squash for the rest of the season. So yes, you can do it.
Right.
You can do it. And I noticed that Millie was talking about being in Norfolk Inland, and their last frost date can be the middle of May. So there again, depending on where you live and what your environment is, it's very important. You want to back out of that to start propagating those tomato seeds. So if it's the middle of May, then I would not even begin to start doing those seeds until the 1st of April for your tomatoes, for example. And then other things require even warmer soil. I highly recommend buying a soil thermometer, one of the long ones, so that you can see what your actual soil temperature is. And remember, anything you plant in the garden, you can plant in a container.
Okay. And are there any problems with using eggshells to propagate seeds? That's from Cecilia.
And Cecilia, I saw your question on the chat, and I can't answer that from personal experience, but I have heard that you can. I think it's very important that you clean those eggshells out really good. And remember, when you're propagating things, you've got to have a little bit of drainage. So that may be a little sticky to do, but you certainly can. And I've seen people use toilet paper rolls and so forth and so on to propagate their seeds in. So, your imagination really dictates a lot of these things and creates what we call garden hacks. And we love them because, you think about the good old days, our grandparents and great grandparents didn't have all of these grow lights and everything else that's out there. So, give it a shot. I have a rule in my garden: 3 strikes and you're out. But anything that dies is an opportunity. So don't hesitate to keep on trying. Don't hesitate.
Anything that'll hold soil is a good, is a good planting container. But like Jen says, on an eggshell, probably the best way to get a drainage hole without cracking the whole shell is after you've poured your egg out of there, that you might have a drill with a tiny little drill bit. And
Or even
just,
a tack.
yeah, just because if you try to crack it, it might just destroy your eggshell. Anything that'll hold soil.
There you go. As I said, all of these links that I provided for you are on the Master Gardener website under, the majority of them are under vegetables. The only exception is the one from the National Gardening Association. You can just Google it and say when to, the National Gardening Association, when to plant vegetables in El Paso. That's where I picked the link up last night. So it's very easy to do.
This isn't a question, but Jen from Canada commented that she's very jealous of January tomatoes. I told her that we have had a very mild winter, and Art is a guru getting anything to sprout. Normal
Well,
people usually can't do
Well,
it.
with this COVID thing, and I'm retired, so these are my babies, my experiments and things like that. So on good days, I'll wheel them out. And on bad nights that are going to be cold, if it's going to be below freezing, I'll wheel them back into the garage. So it keeps me active.
Well, and I see Millie's comment too about the genetically modified seeds, and I'm not a scientist. I'm a home gardener, but I think it's very interesting that these were carrots she was talking about that have been genetically modified, so they're resistant to carrot fly. And those are the things that are going on behind the scenes in horticulture all the time. People are developing more and more cultivars of these different kinds of things. We see all sorts of new tomatoes, eggplants, chilies, everything coming out all the time. So give it a shot. Don't be afraid to try it, and journal it. And if it doesn't work, then you'll know not to go back there next year.
Yeah, sometimes you might want a specific color of, for example, geraniums, and you want to make sure, hey, I wanted red. Well, those seeds are probably available, but they were grown on very controlled environment where they made sure that pollen from a white one or a pink one or whatever other color of geraniums did not get to the female part of that plant. So those seeds might be a little bit more expensive because they were grown under more expensive conditions. Otherwise, you can have a variability of different colors because you're going to cross. It's just like a person coming from a parent that has brown hair and blonde hair, or blue eyes and green eyes. You never know which of the genetics they're going to get from what parent. Okay, so it's very important that you realize that you're not going to get that true taste of that peach unless you use another, and that's going to be training in the future. If we produce a tree by doing one of the other methods, which is growing from a cutting or air layering or grafting, you're producing a clone. If you're producing from a seed, you're going to get the variability of genetics all mixed up.
What about
buying seeds? Can you speak more towards the difficulty in finding seeds to buy this year?
There are tons and tons of seed catalogs out there. And in the cooler months when we're all, kind of huddled on around the fireplace and stuff, that's a great time to get those, and you can request those seed catalogs, Park Seeds, Gurney, Totally Tomato. They're a dime a dozen. They're everywhere, and you can go through and order those seeds. And if you order enough, your shipping and handling is going to be free. So, and of course, then you can always try the big box stores. And I've had a little. I'm with you, Chris. I haven't found as many this year in the big box stores. So I think your catalogs are a great way to go.
Well, they're starting to ship in the the trees and the plants and all that to the big box stores and all that. So they're starting to put out their display of all the seeds that they have and all. So they'll be coming in here pretty soon in February.
Typically are out by now, but they have been
Right.
a little later than usual. So don't give up, just keep trying. So.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank Helen and Stella for being
Yes.
our question people, and Veronica for helping us out with this presentation. Like I said, hope to see you all in the future because we've got other ways to propagate lots of things.
So we thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you in the garden.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.